Welcome back. Week 2 of the John Edwards corruption trial starting tomorrow. It's already off to a hot start. Former aide Andrew Young spilling details of the senator's affair, but this trial isn't about his love life. It is about the alleged misuse of campaign donations, and in that area, Young has already come under fire himself, admitting that he used some of those donor funds to build a house and much more. Joining me now, Marcellus McCrae, a defense attorney and former prosecutor, and defense attorney David Wohl. Good to see both of you gentlemen this morning.
Good morning,
Good morning. Good morning. Marcellus, I'll start with you on this one. Of course, Andrew Young did admit, he said, listen, to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars, yeah, we built a pool in our home, we put in a home movie theater, we extended the house by a bedroom. Does this discredit him as a witness altogether?
I think it does discredit him, but I think that that's just the beginning of it. I think there's a number of other items. You know, he has immunity. There's also some emails that have come out that have shown some animosity towards Edwards. You also have the inconsistent statements that he's given during the trial. So in addition to the motives with respect to being opportunistic and sort of, catching himself on the coattails of Edwards, you also have all these other variables that are serious problems for his credibility.
But David, does that totally throw out everything that you're going to hear from Andrew Young on the stand and what we've heard thus far, some of the shocking testimony from last week that Andrew Young claims that he was afraid that there might have been a possibility that he could have gotten shot, not necessarily by Edwards himself, but by perhaps someone else?
There's no evidence of that, Arthur. I think that's a sympathy ploy. Andrew Young is any defense attorney's dream in this case. I mean, the reality is he contacted 3 witnesses before the trial ever started to sort of square his testimony with theirs. He built his dream home, as you indicated. He also cashed in on the case by writing a book, collecting $200,000 of proceeds from that book, and also engaging in negotiations for a movie deal. So this jury is going to ask itself, are we going to send a man, John Edwards, to prison for 30 years based upon the testimony of a man who, but for his being given immunity, would probably be going to prison himself? And if a jury does get past that and gets into the substance of the case, they've got to look at basically whether or not these funds were campaign funds or personal funds. Bunny Mellon, the rich donor who gave him these funds, there is evidence that she wanted them to go toward covering up this personal issue, this affair, and did not want them to go toward campaign issues. Now, if the jury believes that, and they believe that John Edwards didn't have personal knowledge of how the funds were being switched around by his aides, they will acquit him. And Andrew Young is the star witness, and the case rests on him. So I don't think there's any chance at this point of a conviction.
Okay, well, Marcellus, David just mentioned the personal aspect of this trial.
Right.
It's not about the personal aspect, but Rielle Hunter will take the stand, and she is the mistress who had the baby for Senator Edwards. This is how this thing all kicked off, and there is an alleged sex tape between them, and of course Rielle Hunter's legal team requested that the tape's not going to be presented as evidence, but they're saying they want to strictly limit how much talk we hear about that tape. So will the jury be able to discern and hear all these personal allegations and personal accounts of what happened in this whole affair here and be able to make a fair decision, Marcellus, and throw that out? And do you think in the end this is going to get Edwards off the hook and he won't see any jail time?
I actually think that this is part of the problems that the defense has, because you take everything that we heard about Young, for example. Sure, he's got credibility issues, but the fact of the matter is the prosecution knows that people go to prison every day in this country based on the testimony of people that are considered to be dishonest and considered to be greedy. They're called cooperating witnesses, so this is nothing new. And I think the prosecution can also say, let's posit this. Can Young both be credibility compromised and Edwards be guilty at the same time? And the answer is yes. And really it is going to boil down to this issue, that whether the prosecution's theory that Edwards made his family the cornerstone of his campaign, did any of this money, not necessarily all of it, but did any of this money go in order to keep the secret of the mistress and the child from the voters? And if so, inexorably, you can't separate his family from his campaign, because Edwards himself melded the two together, and the prosecution's theory will be that it is a campaign contribution. And I think that the more we hear about this tape, whether they show the tape or not, the more that we hear about all of these, salacious allegations, it's going to be very difficult for the jury to compartmentalize these things, and they may actually return a verdict, a reverse nullification issue, a no confidence vote against
Marcellus,
Edwards.
I've got to jump in there. I do apologize because we could go on, but Edwards facing 6 charges, felony and misdemeanor combined, possible 30 years in prison. We'll have to leave it there. David Wohl, I do apologize. I didn't give you a lot of time. It just kind of worked out that way. No personal affront.
Count on an acquittal. Let's put it that way.
Count on an acquittal. I heard it. I heard it
Yeah.
from you. We'll mark that down. David Wohl and Marcellus McCrae, thank you very much for chiming in.